That'd be a good one. So this is by Willie. I think he's a World of Warcraft content creator for the most part, and he's been playing Final Fantasy 14, and he says, "Just get through Realm Reborn," they said. So I think it's his thoughts on Realm Reborn. Let's see what he has to say about it.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, Willie here. A few months back there was a disturbance in the MMORPG force. A paradigm shift the likes of which we have truly not seen since the MMO market was dominated over a decade ago by World of Warcraft. Blizzard's mainstay game has now looked more mortal than it has in many a year, amidst the latest expansion failing to meet players' hopes, repeating mistakes of the past, and being scarce on non-time locked daily content. Whilst at Blizzard, accusations dating back to even the old guard who were
not only that, it's like not only they did all that he has just said, on top of it, they're repeating that in 9.2. Like, you guys know we've seen the video here from Soul Breezy where he talks about the amount of time it's going to take people to get like flying in 9.2 and how absolutely ridiculous that is. I actually saw Preach reacting to that video earlier today, and yeah, Preach's reaction to it was basically like, so let me get this straight. Endwalker's been out for a couple of weeks now, right? And everybody that wanted to has already unlocked flight on all of Endwalker's zones, right? Okay, just checking. Just checking, because it's going to take people like 26 days or some shit to unlock flight in 9.2 Zereth Mortis. Imagine just the absolute free-to-play mechanics that they put in there with like fucking time-gating shit away from people. It's so ridiculous. It's like playing Warframe, but paying a monthly fee and not getting to skip the times that it takes to craft items.
Suddenly put upon a pedestal are now coming into question. It wasn't only the players that were tiring of the constant stream of disappointment either. Many content creators felt in a similar position, finding it harder to log into WoW each day and considering options that were now starting to look more and more appealing. And it was at this time that a competent game really came in its own to receive more widespread recognition than it would have been believed possible. Final Fantasy XIV.
I just once again would like to point out that I started long before any of this bullshit happened. All right, and just want to point that out and make sure nobody's gonna call me like a flavor of the week. I gave up all the way back in BFA, okay? Because BFA was already ass, and don't nobody want to play that ass, right? And then I played Shadowlands, and mostly because I wanted to play with Q, and then I basically kidnapped Q from World of Warcraft and brought him over here, and now Q is happier. See, I'm a very nice guy.
Really fell into place for it to be able to see incredible growth over such a short space of time, and despite us not having the exact numbers, I think the assessment it's currently the most played MMORPG is not too difficult to believe. What with running out of both digital copies some time ago and choosing to halt sales as Endwalker has caused servers to become well overpopulated, and I was feeling in somewhat of a similar position to many at the time. Classic WoW had just finished, we were well settled into TBC, which was quite raid loggy once you've got the start of the expansion out of the way. Classic Era had all of a dozen or so players on it, and Season of Mastery had not been announced yet, quite the portion of downtime, and as many did at this point, I decided to give Final Fantasy XIV a look. This game had also existed for many years, which had confidently and quietly been rising up the ranks, absorbing players from other MMOs, and continually putting out expansion after expansion, and from what we heard as outsiders, the players who were into it really rated it. That was one thing that I think pushed a lot of people over the edge to finally giving it a go. At Blizzard and surrounding their games, you often get this air of an impression that can be quite a toxic environment where elitism and gatekeeping reign. Over on 14, the impression seemed to be the more the merrier, and so with an open mind in I went and decided to share what I experienced as a video, a bit of a different format from my norm too, to try and capture some of those live impressions. And at that point in time, I'd been doing all I could to avoid any and all tells of anything Final Fantasy XIV related. If I understood one thing, it was that 14 had a heavy story emphasis, so I didn't want that spoiled. I wanted to learn all I could as a new player and get that authentic, fresh experience. I put a video about 14 out 3 or so months ago now, and I've logged in now and again, and each time I do, I'm met with a seemingly never-ending questline. The story of A Realm Reborn to fully get into the game isn't exactly the smallest hurdle to cross, and it's one that every single player must do to fully unlock the features of the game and start to get into the expansions.
I mean, you can skip.
It's been a recurring piece of criticism against 14 that A Realm Reborn story is kind of, well, not exactly the most...
I can't get into the ARR. The story certain looks like they're trying but just failed miserably. What? Also, the endless padding of the MSQ with tasks such as go here. When was this posted? 21st of April of what, this year? Was that of last year, I would imagine? I mean, not this year. Was that before or after they did the pruning? I don't actually remember. Anyway, talked to the X for line night a lot, come back and said I'll just mindless padding and souring my mood greatly towards the overall experience. It doesn't help that literally everything is locked behind story progression, meaning I don't really have much to do to distract myself anymore now that I'm caught up on most of my logs. What's available to me currently, I just beat Titan and decided to look at how much further I have to go before Heavensward, and yikes. I hope to unlock something interesting before then. Side note, this is just me venting. I love the gameplay. Just MSQ woes. See, this is going to depend on... I think a big portion of people that have a take like this is because they are so focused on I need to catch up. I feel like this is the mentality that a lot of people bring into Final Fantasy XIV. They're like, okay, there's all this content. I need to catch up. I need to go play Endwalker, and I need to do it now. And it always feels to me like a lot of people forget that you don't actually need to catch up. I'm glad that a lot of content creators realize that, and they actually take their time. You don't need to catch up. You just need to enjoy the game. I mean, you don't even need to enjoy the game. You just need to try and enjoy yourself. Just try and have a good time. And I get that some of the stuff in Realm Reborn, not a lot of people like the fact that it is not... Oh, great. We're going to get this. Not a lot of people like the fact that it is not voice acted. Interestingly enough, Gaijin actually told me that he prefers the fact that it is not voice acted because he feels like the voice acting would make it be a little bit over the top. I'm not sure I agree with that, but like I'll tell you right now, Gaijin loved his Realm Reborn experience. Gaijin absolutely loved it. It's his first MMO ever, and he is having a blast with Realm Reborn. Okay, he had an absolute blast with Realm Reborn. So I think your mileage will wildly vary here. And for every person like this, there's probably, I would argue, like 20 or 30 people that are just having a good time in Realm Reborn. It's like, not only I've never really liked the idea of like Realm Reborn's not that bad or Realm Reborn's not that great or whatever. To me, it's like Realm Reborn is Realm Reborn. It's the setting up of the foundation of the world. It's not perfect, but it's pretty damn good, you know? But yeah. So you popped this MMO chip. Yes. Yes, I did.
Thrilling. But just get through it and it's totally worth it. I've heard nothing of showers of praise for the expansions and beyond. It's just, well, you've got to get over this little hurdle first. And I'm actually a little surprised that so many players have pushed through and gotten into the later game stages. 14, for me at least, deviates quite considerably from what usually makes an MMO, where emphasis is placed on the player and how they interact with others and shape their own gameplay. 14 instead takes the RPG and quite clearly puts that element first and foremost. 14 is there to tell you to play their story, and then once you've sat down and gotten through the whole thing, then you can really start to play with the toys the game has to offer. Now, yes, I could go through the quests and just...
I don't think you have to do the whole thing. Like I said, the way that I played it, not everybody has to play the way that I played it, but it's like, I went through and I completed Realm Reborn, and then I did Coils, and then I did Crystal Tower, and then we went to Heavensward, and I completed Heavensward, and then I did Sky Pirates, and then I did Alexander. Actually, I think I did Alexander first, and then Sky Pirates. And then I went to Stormblood, did Stormblood, completed Omega, completed the Evilise raids, which those I'm not a big fan. I'm not a big fan of the Evilise quest because I don't have nostalgia for Tactics or 12 because I never played those games. So yeah, those raids didn't really mean much to me. But it's like, it was fine. Like, you know, it's not like it bothered me too much. It's just like I didn't have the nostalgia that a lot of people do. And then after that, I still went and did the optional quest line, because Stormblood has like this optional quest line of the four deities or whatever, where you fight against the phoenix and the lion and the whatever. Did those. And then I went into Shadowbringers, and then I was caught up. And then I started doing the Shadowbringers raids and the Alliance raids with the near stuff and whatnot. And just, you know, I didn't rush through the MSQ to get the Shadowbringers. I was like, no, fuck that. Shadowbringer's going to be there by the time I get there, right? It's not going to disappear by the time I get there. So I'll take my time and I'll get there. And I knew people that were already in Shadowbringers and doing current content. And I was like, oh, fuck it. And I'll get there when I get there. It's whatever. And I feel like if a lot of people would just look at it like that, I think they would enjoy the game so much more, as opposed to constantly being like, I gotta catch up, I gotta catch up, I gotta catch up. It's WoW brain formatting, you know, like the same way that you format like a pen drive, a USB drive. You format it to like FAT32, NTFS, AgeFS, whatever for Macintosh. It's like everybody's brain is formatted in WoW format, or a majority of MMO players' brains is formatted in WoW format. And when they try to format it to Final Fantasy XIV format, they can't copy the files over. They don't understand that it's a different game.
To skip every single line of dialogue, only watching cutscenes and the voice parts perhaps, but that seems to be entirely missing the point of what 14 hopes to deliver by being narrative first. Yet it's still difficult to bring myself to do, and there is a boost of course, but I'm not doing that either. Boosts and MMORPGs for me just don't fit together. Now the obvious thing to say here is if you don't like it, don't do it, which isn't entirely the point. It's not just for me to try personally, but something I want to explore in terms of having an interest in MMOs, as they're what I do. They're a genre I've played for years and have had a lasting influence on my life. Understanding why 14 has done so well, what it does differently, how it measures up against the big other MMOs, what makes it tick, basically. And current Realm Reborn, I was somewhat amazed to learn, has actually been reworked and shortened as of last year. It used to be even longer than it currently is. To sell somebody...
And I played the longer version. Back in my day, Realm Reborn lasted considerably longer, and there were many more fetch quests. You youngins don't know how good you have it these days.
On playing an MMO, but then following up the conversation with, you kind of do need to play 30, 40, 50 hours before you really get into the good stuff, is something that would cause any other type of gamer to think you're insane.
I disagree. I don't think you need 40, 50 hours to get to the good stuff. I think the game in and of itself is good. I think in 40 and 50 hours you get even better stuff. I just don't think it's fair to just say, oh, Realm Reborn is ass. I don't agree with that. And a lot of people definitely have that mindset. And I feel like maybe they lack a comparison with other games or something, because Realm Reborn is not, it's just not bad. I almost feel like people just have recency bias to the point where it's like, oh, Heavensward so much better. Yeah, Heavensward is so much better. That doesn't make Realm Reborn bad. It's the Dark Souls 2 discussion. It's like, yeah, Dark Souls 2 is the worst Dark Souls game in my personal opinion, you know, and I think a majority of people agree with me on that, but it doesn't make it a bad game. You know, even the worst Souls game is pretty good, in my opinion.
Or anyone doing, well, frankly, any activity at all. In fact, among MMORPG reviews in general, it's often the case you see comments are left saying, oh, but you only played till X level, you didn't get past Y, or you only played the game for Z hours usually being easily over 10, when pretty much any other game I can think of, if you're gonna have been going for over 10 hours, and you think to yourself, this isn't great, you're going to stop. And then you're going to say to other people, well, it wasn't very good actually, I played it for quite a long time and it didn't really catch my attention. If the opening of something does not sell you on it, what on earth would possess you to think, well, only 30 more hours, it'll be worth it? How on earth can something like that be recommended? In fact, let's take a look at some other games from How Long to Beat just for a little bit of a comparison. Resident Evil Village, main story about 9.5 hours completion, 36 hours. Hitman 3, Main story, 8 hours. Completion is 42 hours. Halo Infinite, main story, 10 hours. Completion, nearly 1 day's play.
Okay, this isn't like very fair. You're showing a bunch of like games that have nothing to do with the JRPG. Like, show me the completionist hours for a JRPG, which is what this game is. Like, show me the completionist hours for friggin' Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Xenoblade Chronicles X. Some completionist hours for like Trails of whatever, the train one. I forget the name. I haven't really played those, but like, you know, show me the completionist hours for those. Show me the completionist hours for friggin' Bravely Default. That's the stuff that you can compare this to. You're going to compare this to like Halo Infinite and Hitman? Come on. I don't think that these games are that relevant. Like, if you're going to compare it, even though this is an MMO, but I get it, you're trying to get like a single player example, you're going to have to bring to the front a JRPG, right? So it's like, you have to think about it from that point, or even bring up like an older Final Fantasy game or something like that.
Time. But Will, you may be saying these are single player games, you cannot possibly compare the time investment to an MMO. Well, throughout A Realm Reborn, it didn't feel too uncommon from a single player game, if I'm honest.
Yeah, like I said, it's like you can compare it to single player games, but you should compare it to JRPGs, because that would be the same genre that this one is in. There's no way you can compare this to like a shooter campaign. It's not reasonable.
Ton of cutscenes and instancing, putting me by myself. At least there were some dungeons to break things up a little bit, but at times it felt like a real drag to try and get through. I'm curious to hear whether anyone else who has given the game a go felt something similar, especially after A Realm Reborn has been shortened and found things to be a little slower than they would have liked. In fact, I finally decided to go and actually see where I was up to in the main story quest, how long until I can escape the Realm Reborn prison, and oh my god, I've barely made a dent in the absolute wall of quests that I have to do. Now, admittedly, I was doing a lot of side quests, which now I appreciate to have been a mistake if I want to progress relatively quickly.
See, there it is. The problem's been identified. That's the problem. That is definitely a problem. I completely agree with that. It's the fact that, you know, but again, it's that WoW brain formatting, and I had the exact same problem when I started playing the game. It's just like, your brain is just not formatted to play this game. If you've played World of Warcraft before, your brain is formatted to play WoW style, which is just like, you know, you clean the map. That's what you do in WoW. You clean the map. Like, I haven't cleaned my map. My map is chock full of side quests that I haven't done. You know, I'll go back and do them eventually. It's like a fun little side thing to do, but side quests are not the bulk of your adventure. If you want to unlock things, you should be focusing on like actually doing the main story quest. And that is definitely a problem that I had, and that I was very much helped by my chat who was around when I was playing 14, because they just told me, look, dude, just play the MSQ. Don't worry about these side quests, because, you know, it's not like they're bad. They're just like standard side quests, and they kind of like water down the main story experience. And that's why a lot of people, I feel like, don't gel with the main story experience. That might be even what happened to that other comment. Sometimes I even forget that this is a thing for people, because I've been trying to drill to people's minds so hard, like, don't worry about the side quest. Don't worry about, I say it like all the time in my videos, in my streams, that to me, I almost feel like this is a solved problem. In my brain, it's almost like, it's okay, Rurikhan, you've told everybody, so this is not a problem anymore. You don't have to worry about it. But then I remember that, like, you know, I'm actually a pretty small content creator, so a lot of people don't watch my stuff, and therefore they don't know about the whole thing with the MSQ and the side quests and all of that stuff, and that you really shouldn't be focusing that much on side quests, because you'll end up missing out on some other stuff. But yeah.
Levels above where I should be, and I have one serious block of main story in front of me if I do want to start hitting the higher levels and getting on a better basis with the game. I wonder.
But see, that's again, there's this viewpoint that is like, oh, I have all of these chores that I got to get done before I get to the good bit. And it's like, no, you have all of this content ahead of you. You have all of this content ahead of you. And is it like the best that this game has to offer? No, but it's setting the foundation to the world. You want to know something that Gaijin told me? And by the way, for those of you who don't know, those of you who happen to watch my second channel, if you don't know who Gaijin Hunter is, he's a friend of mine. We do a podcast together about Monster Hunter because we're both like crazy about Monster Hunter, right? And I got him to play Final Fantasy XIV. And here's what he told me when he finished Realm Reborn and I helped him do coils and stuff. He basically said that he does not understand how people that skip Realm Reborn understand the story. How people that skip Realm Reborn can relate to the characters that then show up during Heavensward. He doesn't understand that because there's so much story there. There's so much stuff that happens that it's like you're really hurting yourself by skipping that content. And again, it's like, to me, I look at that, it's like, oh, look at all this content that I have ahead of me. It's not a chore. His brain is looking at it as a chore because, again, of the World of Warcraft format, right? He's formatted for World of Warcraft. And I'm not saying this to like criticize him because I think this is a really good video. And I think it is important that we acknowledge that there's a lot of people that, you know, have this impression of Final Fantasy XIV. And I don't think that you should play a video game if it gets good, like fucking 1,000 hours in or whatever, right? I think that you should be able to enjoy the game from the get-go. It's just, I was able to enjoy the game from the get-go. A lot of people that I got into the game were able to enjoy the game from the get-go. And most of the people that aren't able to enjoy the game from the get-go, to me, my interpretation of it is that World of Warcraft formatting, because World of Warcraft has taught people for so long that it's like, no, listen, the only thing that matters is endgame. Endgame and rating. That's the only thing that matters. When in reality, anybody that plays Final Fantasy XIV knows that, you know, endgame rating and all that stuff is there, but it's not necessarily the most important thing to do in the entirety of the game. Like, most people understand that, and that's cool.
To what extent the later game is pushed by those who have leapt over the hurdle of Realm Reborn many years ago. After all, Final Fantasy XIV is not a game where you need alt characters unlike many other MMOs. This should be a one-time experience to go through, unless something possesses you to want to see the story again. Perhaps that makes it a little bit easier to say grit your teeth, get through it. Once it's done, then you can get to the good stuff. And I'm not the kind of person either who buys into rushing straight to the endgame for MMOs. I've happily leveled many characters across many different titles many times over. In fact, I often find that early game with a constant influx of activities and fast progression to be really enjoyable. There's just something about the pacing and duration of Realm Reborn that seems to miss the mark for me. The small little filler quests here and there where you have to go and pick up some dung, explore a pathway, or take something to a different NPC to get a few lines and then head back again. The sheer volume of content that you need to take in to be able to follow what's happening, and the gradual rate at which the story is drip fed into you. I really want to like it because the game does a lot of things that I like, but it's difficult for me at times. This feels like a side of Final Fantasy XIV that a lot of people have just pushed through in the end, but I've had a bit of a different experience, so I wanted to share that and see if it's something which is relatable at all, and whether indeed so many people can still recommend going through A Realm Reborn to see what lies ahead. Is it still worth the time investment, you would say? I imagine it's something I will get to the end of eventually on a very casual basis, as there is a lot that I like the look of in Final Fantasy XIV, and I do want to see more of it. And I'm going to have to get there one quest at a time. If you've had any similar experience at all, let me know as a new or veteran player. It is surprising that so many people have got across this hurdle, but maybe more people have bought into the boost than I appreciate. Either way, let me know your thoughts. As always, thank you so much for watching and listening in, and I shall see you on the next one very soon.
How he plays RuneScape. That's cool. Yeah, it's like, again, it's weird to me that if he's leveled up multiple characters and he doesn't really consider himself as someone that rushes to endgame, it's weird to me that it's so hard for him to like enjoy the story. But then again, it could just be due to the fact that there's a lot of text to read. It's like, I'll tell you right now, the biggest difficulty for me when I was playing Final Fantasy XIV from the very beginning was the fact that like I had to actually read the quests out loud. That was the problem. Reading the quests out loud was annoying. Make sure to like the video, though. It's a pretty good video. So, yeah. It's good stuff from Willie. Let me swap over back to this.